To these. Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. We are Zooming here from Pineville, Louisiana, kind of a grand finale to our state conference known as Rendezvous. And I'm very pleased today to announce that we have a very special speaker coming straight from New Orleans via Zoom is Linda Auld, affectionately known as the Nola Bug Lady. She runs Barber Laboratories, a pest control company, store founded in 1921 by her grandfather, Ernest Barber. In addition to helping New Orleanians solve their pest problems for over 45 years, Linda has also studied and promoted understanding beneficial insects. She has raised 127 species of butterflies and moths, studying and photographing their life cycles. She has performed 30 years of butterfly count surveys for the North American Butterfly Association. And since 2014, has helped Monarch Butterflies, installed 17 school gardens in the metro area, gardens in 4 Louisiana welcome centers across the state, donated countless plants to public park gardens, and created Monarch way stations in 7 different Louisiana cities. Linda enjoys working with school and scout groups. She gives presentations to garden clubs, plant societies, master gardeners, and master naturalist groups. Her 2019 project was called Go Grow Natives. Its purpose was to promote using wildlife-friendly native plants. She has also written articles for the Louisiana Native Plant Society, the Orleans and the Baton Rouge Audubon Societies, and the Southern Lepidopterist Society. Linda self-published her first book, Bug Lady's Butterfly Summer, currently available at Barber Laboratories on Jefferson Highway in Harahan, where she also sells native butterfly pollinator plants. And I will share her website on our chat, but it is nolabuglady.com. And Linda's garden was 3rd in our area to be certified for wildlife through the Louisiana Native Plant Society Certified Habitat Program. And it is gold, which is the highest you can get. So welcome, Linda. And this year, at this particular presentation, we're going to focus on monarchs. So over to you, Linda. I'm going to mute myself.
Thank you so much, and good morning. It's such a pleasure to be here today to share with you my work with monarchs. I began raising monarchs in 1981, and since then they have led me on quite an interesting journey through becoming a milkweed seed distributor through the state, which has progressed into selling plants because, you know, we are a very impatient society and we don't want to fool with seeds. We want plants yesterday to feed our caterpillars. So I'm selling native plants and really enjoying it. But each year, Monarch Watch has been giving us directions on different ways that we could help monarchs. So installing the gardens in the schools has been so gratifying to me that I'm sharing the knowledge of nature to these children where they can see the interaction of bugs and plants, and going to visit these classrooms and asking the children, are you enjoying the garden? And hearing this boom of yes, you know, and seeing their excitement in their eyes, and it's just been very gratifying. And installing the gardens at the welcome centers has been a challenge, but many people have told me how much they've enjoyed it. Putting the plants out where people can see them and get interested in them and trying them. That's how we can get that ball rolling about native plants and how important they are. So this year, the Monarch Journey has led me to a research project that is very important for our area, and I'm excited to tell you about it today. Plant it and they will come really does work. if you put the milkweed plant in your garden, you can expect to see this busyness in your yard. The butterfly comes in and she lays an egg on the plants. The caterpillars hatch and start munching on the leaves and going through their cycle, getting bigger and bigger. And then at an appropriate time, they go find a spot that they think is just perfect. Sometimes I just have to laugh when I see them on the side of a piece of statue or a windowsill or a bird bath hanging there with all of its beauty, those gold dots giving the message to predators that, hey, don't eat me, I taste bad, because they eat milkweed, which is a toxic plant that helps them fight off predators. But not all predators are stay away, unfortunately. So that's what we're going to share with you today. Monarch Watch is the national organization that monitors the overwintering populations of monarch butterflies in Mexico. And you can see that each year it fluctuates. Things change in the environment that can offset their migration habits. And so I think this is an important study for us to figure out, why is this happening? In 2013, they reported the lowest number in recorded history. At that time, many scientists began working on these issues at all the major universities around the United States to determine the causes. They discovered that the caterpillars that eat tropical milkweed develop smaller wings, so they can't get to Mexico, so they're stuck here. They also found out that once it becomes 80 degrees, it's too hot for monarchs to do long-term directional flight. So those two elements play a very important role in the area where we live, in the New Orleans area. These factors do not pose problems to people above the lake where the temperatures are cooler, and we're going to discuss that a little bit later. But however, there are fluctuations. And so when this happened, many things were discovered through all of this research. That monarchs are facing multiple issues: loss of habitat due to logging in Mexico, where they're chopping down the forest where they go, herbicide and pesticide use in the Midwest, and increased vulnerability due to OE disease. Well, here in New Orleans, we can't really do much about loss of habitat in Mexico, and we can't help much about the herbicide and pesticide use in the Midwest. But studying the OE disease fluctuations here in New Orleans, yes, that's something that we can do. The University of Georgia is the leading team for OE research in the Southeast United States. The team leader is Sonia Allitzer. And here in New Orleans in 2014, Kristen Steele, PhD candidate, began her thesis work connected with Project Monarch Health. And Kristen was monitoring 40 gardens in the Uptown, Riverbend, Lower Garden District area, and finding that each year the levels would fluctuate. She brought me to the lab and showed me how the process all works. And since then, we've been working together to try to get the information out to the people about what's going on in our metro area. So what is OE? Ophryocystis elektroscirrha. Yes, that's very difficult to say, and that's why we just call it OE. It's a protozoan parasite infection that cripples, deforms, and kills monarchs, especially in the Southeast United States. Project Monarch Health in University of Georgia, they compile the data and give a report each year about what they find. So they began the project in 2006, and this map depicts all of the participation for the years of 2006 through 2013, which crossed 28 states and 2 Canadian provinces. Citizen scientists have submitted over 20,000 samples since the project began. And here is a more updated map from 2020 showing that in that year, they collected 6,417 samples through the Project Monarch Health. And you can see on this map that it depicts very different amounts depending on the region in which you live. The Northwest area has the 9.6% infection rate, whereas over in the South where we are, it's a 47.9%. And that shows the whole Southeast, whereas where we are in the New Orleans area, Kristen has shared with me that her data proves that in the winter months, in the fall and winter and before migration time of year, our levels reach over 90%. You know, I didn't want to believe it either when the University of Georgia told us that it was stemming from the tropical milkweed. I felt, how does someone in Georgia know what's going on in New Orleans? Because I can testify that every January I have eggs on my plants, monarch eggs on the milkweed plants. These monarchs should be in Mexico. They shouldn't be here. So I know a lot of people experience this also. And it says here, the highest infection prevalence occurs in the southern US in regions with resident non-migratory monarch populations. That's us, folks. So what is a citizen scientist? They are concerned members of the public who provide data to help scientists understand long-term and widespread changes in monarch populations. In fact, much of what the scientific world knows about monarch ecology and conservation is because of citizen scientists. They have been collecting data on monarchs for over 60 years through many different programs. So why should I participate? Well, it would be impossible for a single scientist or even a team of scientists to sample enough monarchs in enough locations to get a complete understanding of what affects monarch populations. We've been very fortunate to have a local research lab at Tulane University. Kristen has done an excellent job of sharing her research with our area. She's done excellent presentations to the Louisiana Native Plant Society and to the Louisiana Master Gardeners. But she also visited some of my schools where we installed those gardens, because I told her that her work would inspire some of these children to become scientists one day. So Kristen is at the end of her 5-year study and is about to publish the results, which we are eagerly awaiting. But we feel that there are a lot of unanswered questions in our area. So Jenna Hoff and I have started the Nola Butterfly Club on Facebook and Instagram to try to get this more information about what is going on in our area and to help people better understand the situation. We felt that there was a need to continue this program, but to enlarge to encompass a much larger area. So through all these projects that I've done through these years, I've met so many people, and I've gotten 12 of these friends that I've made to agree to participate in this program. So we have formed this group where these ladies have agreed to raise the butterflies and sample them so that we can get the results and then pass them on to the University of Georgia. So we decided that we were going to hold some workshops. The first workshop was held at Longview Gardens on February 13th. And Kristen is here about to show the sampling procedure video, which you can see on the website, University of Georgia, Project Monarch Health. You can refer to that and see a lot of information. We went through the program. We went through the kit of supplies and showed them the procedures. Jenna also provided handheld microscopes for each one of the participants. And you can see here on the left that they're learning how to use them. They work very well. And on the right, you'll see that Jenna was explaining the Monarch Watch's latest understanding of the monarch migration. This is the sampling process. It's very easy. They give you step-by-step directions. Now, this is our group, but anyone who's looking at this information can certainly contact University of Georgia on their own and participate in this program. Or you could start a little group wherever you live, but it is an important study. So you're going to hold the butterfly securely with the wings, press a clear sticker. You can use Scotch tape, but not the one that you can't see through. And then you stick that on a file card and put it under the microscope. So this is what you would see on your slide. The microscope slide will reveal the fate of the butterfly, healthy, and it can be released, or infected with protozoan parasite and should not be released. You see that middle picture that there's those longer, elongated, darker circles. Those are the butterfly scales. And then on the far right, you'll see that once they're removed, those little pepper things, that's the spores. The next two slides are from someone else's PowerPoint, my friend's PowerPoint that allowed me to use these. So a lot of people want to know, how do I know that I have a problem? Well, when the pupa forms and you see all of that black spotting, you know that that's not right. You can even see it on their abdomen. Monarchs that are heavily infected with OE can have difficulty emerging from their pupal cases. Or they can look perfectly fine, but then they're just a carrier. People have asked me, well, how does this happen? And how does the OE even get in the picture? So Kristen has allowed us permission to use her graph, which depicts two ways that the OE is transferred onto the plants. So what happens is during mating, the male and female swap these spores. And then as they visit the plant, you go down the middle section there, you'll see that as the adults visit the plant to get nectar from the flowers, or when the female is tasting the plant to find out that it's a milkweed where she can lay eggs, the spores are shed onto the leaves, which later the larvae consume, and then they're infected. The other scenario is on the far right, which shows you the then infected monarch female as she lays the eggs on the leaves, that the spores are on the eggs. And the first thing the freshly hatched caterpillar does is eats its eggshell. So then it's infected. And if you have 2 or 3 on a plant, if one is infected, then they will all become infected. So then they get to pupation. Sometimes they make it through, sometimes they don't. But then, you got deformed butterflies. And a lot of people don't realize that when they first hatch, They have to get their wings right so that they can fly, but their mouth is in two pieces, their tongue, their proboscis, that they have to form into a tube where they can suck the nectar. So a lot of times that's deformed, they can't really feed. There have been a lot of confusion about native milkweeds and non-native milkweeds. So the aquatic milkweed is the one that is really native to the South Shore, the Metro New Orleans area. There's a sample of it in the Tulane Herbarium from 1890. When I'm hiking the Bonnie Carré Spillway, this is what I see. When I'm hiking the Honey Island Swamp trails, this is what I see. Tropical milkweed has never been seen on any of the trails I've hiked in the state. It's only in the gardens where we planted it. The green milkweed plays a very important role to migrating monarchs on the western side of our state. A couple of weeks ago, Jenna and I traveled over to Cameron to witness the migration and to look for the green milkweed. So these are two that play a very important role in the state of Louisiana. Butterfly weed and swamp milkweed do very well north of the lake, but they really struggle growing down here in our little gumbo swamp. You know, Louisiana has varied terrains, different climates, different soils, different habitats, and each one of these has specific growing needs and requirements. The butterfly weed really likes good drainage. Rick Webb from Louisiana Growers recommends to use pine bark and sand to grow this plant. I was given permission to install some of these tuberosa and some beautiful phlox, garden phlox, in the flower bed behind the Kentwood Welcome Center. And when we started installing these plants, there's a little 3 foot wide by the length of the building garden behind it. And we started at the right-hand side, worked along through to the end. And when we got to the opposite end, there wasn't any dirt, but just a bag of pine bark nuggets. And I thought to myself, well, this will be a real interesting experiment. Each time I go up into Mississippi, I always try to stop by there on my way home and check on the little plants. Well, the one that was growing in the pine nuggets was the only one that survived. All the other ones died. So it had made seed pods and made more plants even. So it really thrived in that environment. The swamp milkweed, Jenna has been very successful in growing it in her Gretna garden, but I can share with you that I have killed a bunch of those. So stick with the native milkweed that's common to our area, is what I would say, the aquatic. The Xerxes Society reports the native aquatic milkweed to be of special value to native bees, bumblebees, and honeybees. The plant supports conservation, biological control, meaning it attracts predatory and/or parasitoid insects that prey upon pest insects. It grows in hydrated soils, floodplains, marshes, cypress swamp, ditches, wetlands, and soil that is continuously wet. But it also grows in your regular garden, in a pot. Jenna has it growing right in a big clay pot next to her front door. And the gutter, when it rains, it waters it naturally. And she's produced a lot of seeds off of those plants. So the non-native milkweeds. When you go to your garden center, the tropical milkweed, the silky gold and the scarlet, that's what you're going to see. That's what they've been selling for years and years because it's easy to grow. The monarchs eat it. And so that's what they sell. The hairy balls and the giant milkweed in the last couple of years have hit the garden centers, but all 4 of these are not native to Louisiana. The tropical milkweed is from the Caribbean, the hairy balls is from Africa, and the giant milkweed is from India. So how did tropical milkweed get here? Well, through much investigation, lots of phone calls and conversations, I discovered that Dr. Gary Ross, through conversation, told me that when he was 10 years old in 1955, he remembers seeing this growing in his grandmother's Gentilly garden along the sidewalk, just growing sporadically, not that she had planted it. So he thinks that one of his neighbors was growing it and that the wind blew the seed pods over to his garden, her garden. One thing about the aquatic milkweed, it doesn't have those little fluffy filaments. It's spread by water. So once the seed pods are done, they open up and the seeds fall to the ground, and then rain or when you're watering, they relocate and find a new spot. So the tropical milkweed, even before the 1955s, by reading Charlotte Seidenberg's book, New Orleans Gardens, I discovered that in early days, when before there were garden centers, there were feed stores. If you remember, on North Carrollton, we had Reuter Seed Company. That's where we all went to get vegetable seeds and little plants. That was the beginning of the garden centers, with the feed stores. And before that was seed catalogs. You know, some of us that are up in age, we remember receiving those in the mail, because back then it was hard to deliver plants, but much easier to ship seeds. So what's the difference and why does it matter? In the metro New Orleans area, mild winters without freezes allow the tropical milkweed to survive in masses from fall into the following spring. Areas north of Lake Pontchartrain experience much colder winter temperatures that cause a natural tropical milkweed dieback. Nature lovers in the community buy it throughout the calendar year to feed hungry caterpillars, believing they are helping monarchs. Overcrowding caterpillars on milkweed plants is a known major condition that spreads OE infection. I see that on Facebook all the time, pictures of plants just loaded with caterpillars, and I have to just not look at it. The chemical signature of tropical milkweed seems to particularly invite egg bombing. We've all experienced this on our milkweed plants. When they come in, they just flood our plants with eggs. And the tropical milkweed does have toxins in it, which I believe the butterflies, as they're laying eggs, they're tasting the leaves with their feet to find the proper plant, and somehow they know that the toxin levels are high, and they believe that choosing the high toxin plant would bring more distaste to their caterpillar so that predators wouldn't eat them. In the bug world, there are certain signals, and the colors of the monarch, the black and white and yellow, are symbols that I taste bad, but doesn't always work. Particularly after spring migration, this is another reason why researchers advise against its use. Plant labeling misidentified. And this has happened to me several times. With the recent surge of interest in establishing pollinator habitats and use of native plants, vendors unfamiliar with native plants sometimes mislabel tropical as native swamp milkweed. And, you know, if it was petunias, it wouldn't matter. But in this case, being that it's milkweed, and the difference between tropical and not native and native does make a big difference. So when they're small plants, it's really difficult to tell the difference. But when they get large enough to make a flower, and you see that it's not pink and it's not white, but it's yellow, red, and orange, then you know that, nope, I've got tropical milkweed. So what is the take of all of this? In a recent 50-year study from University of Georgia, it's a layperson's language summary written by Andy Davis and the combined world experts of OE at the Elitzer lab. They say that mathematical modeling suggested the loss of successfully migrating butterflies to OE could run to tens of millions. And I find that shocking. They believe that the three targeted problems are unintentional consequences of three very well-intentioned human interventions. And what does that mean? Commercial monarch breeding programs, meaning butterfly farms who raise them in mass and without sampling them, send them to other parts of the United States. Home rearing of monarchs for release. Now, we're not talking about someone who for educational purposes is raising a handful. We're talking about people who raise hundreds of monarchs. And then third is the planting of tropical milkweed. And this is not true for everywhere in the United States. It's just especially for us in the area where we have overwintering populations. So the good news, everyone who cares about monarchs can take a few simple, easy actions to turn this situation around. So curtail mass commercial rearing. If you know anyone who's doing butterfly farming, they need to know about this issue. Give up home rearing for release. And there again, we're talking about people who are cranking out hundreds of monarchs. Replace your tropical with native milkweed. This is going to be a process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. Anyone who has milkweed in their gardens is going to have to address this issue at one point or time. And then also consider signing up with the Project Monarch Health so that you can discover this on your own. Monarchs will thank you. So gardeners, remember, provide nectar plants all year long. Consider having plants that bloom in the spring, plants that bloom in summer, plants that bloom in the fall. Try to have something all year round. And remember, we have small butterflies, medium butterflies, big butterflies. They all have different likes and different habits. So some of them have short tongues, some of them have long tongues. So provide flat flowers, provide tubular flowers, have an assortment, try new things. During spring migration, raise healthy monarch caterpillars. So after June 1st, we really, in the New Orleans area, should not have milkweed in our gardens. So you have some choices. You can cut them down, you can pull them up, you can start over in the spring. You could put them in pots, put them in a greenhouse, put netting over them. But the main thing is we want to reserve our milkweed plants for when the migrants come, because when the migration comes in spring from Mexico, and you'll recognize them, they're not going to look pristine. They'll look battered and worn because they've been on a journey. But they could not have made that journey if they were sick. So they are healthy. Those are the ones that we want to raise. We don't want to keep raising them in the fall and winter here in New Orleans because we're just raising sick monarchs. And then in the spring, when we could be raising healthy monarchs, we don't have milkweed. So these are things that you need to think about. These organizations are in need of more volunteers and more participation. So I'm hoping this will inspire you to become more involved with Monarch Watch and Journey North. Journey North, you can log on to their website and post when you see monarchs in your yard. Monarch Watch is a very interesting project that studies the migration. So both of these are very important tools to give information to these scientists so that they can give us a better understanding of what's going on, because each year it's different. Monarchs are complicated. Project Monarch Health in University of Kansas, please go on their website. It's so much information and it might help clarify some more of the questions that you might have. Nola Butterfly Club is proud to sponsor these workshops, and we are partnered with the Native Plant Initiative. I really urge you to join our Butterfly Club on Facebook and Instagram, to follow our work and see what's going on, because we're also trying to promote people to inspire them to include other butterflies, have other butterflies focused. There are over 30 different types of butterflies you could attract to your garden right now if you just have the right plants. So they're equally as wonderful to study and watch go through their life cycles, but they don't have all the complicated issues that monarchs have. So come and visit me at my store. You can check out my plant list at nolabuglady@gmail.com. I have caterpillar host plants and nectar plants, and specialize in native pollinator plants. And there again, you can also visit my gardens and see how these plants grow and see if it's something that you might want to add to your garden. Also, you can contact Jenna Hoff through the Facebook Butterfly Club on Messenger. The Native Plant Initiative is a great society to join. You can meet other people who have similar interests as you do. You can share your knowledge and also learn something from them. It's a hands-on society that has lots of great projects going on throughout the city. Check them out. These are our next scheduled workshops in Gretna. Next Saturday at the library on the 9th, and then Old Metairie Library on the 23rd, and on North Shore May 14th. So anybody you know who has missed the workshop, it's going to be a little bit different workshop. So you'll have to register online. Go to nolabuglady@gmail.com. So there again, I hope that all of this information has been helpful to all of you, so that you can have a better understanding of what's going on in our Metro New Orleans area. And any questions you might have, you can always contact me on my website, or stop by the office and we can chat. And unless there are any questions over there, whoever's over there.
Linda, I have a question. Several times you clarified, but I'm not sure if it was clear to me.
What's that?
Home rearing. And I know I have friends that have those little net enclosures that they want to put the caterpillars in because they don't want the birds to get them. So
yes. Well, if you want to raise monarchs in particular, then I urge you to go on that website, because there's it's much more complicated to raise monarchs than any other caterpillar that's in our area, because it involves Clorox, gloves, cleaning your material, cleaning the area where you have these stored with Clorox. So, you know, it's very involved if you want to be successful in getting caterpillars through that cycle that are not infected. You know, and then a lot of people construct little cages with wood. You cannot get OE spores off of wood. So netting is better. Plastic aquariums, glass aquariums, wood is bad. So right now I have black swallowtail caterpillars. All you need is parsley, dill, and fennel. So easy to raise. Sulfur butterflies, Gulf fritillaries. There's so many other things you could be raising right now that, I mean, you still have to wash your container. I mean, look, when we check into a hotel, we expect clean sheets, and we have to provide the same thing for our caterpillars when they're in our bed and breakfast. So sanitation is a really big issue for monarchs. So I'm trying to get people to transition into raising other monarchs, but if you must do it, they should be in a single container. You should never have more than one in a container, because if you have 5 in there and one's sick, they'll all be sick. It's kind of like COVID. So I don't know, does that answer?
Yes, it does, because it sounds like you know, what obviously what we need to do. I know I need to get rid of my tropical milkweed. I just bought some more. And so I will,
Yeah.
I will,
And it's really sad. Now, when people go to garden centers, they really need to speak to the manager and say, where's your native milkweed? Please order it. More growers are growing this, and because they see the demand. The garden centers, when I did my project in 2019, I asked every one of the garden centers that participated in my program, and that was 14 garden centers. I know there's a whole bunch more, but every one of them, I pulled them to the side and said, would you please consider stop selling tropical milkweed? And every one of them said, I'll never stop selling it. So we have a hard road ahead, but we're taking kind of baby steps, trying to get the word out. But I think that more and more people are becoming involved and becoming more aware of the fact that it's really important to have native plants.
absolutely. You know, I'm thinking, I keep reflecting on this guy that I know very well, who has been an avid gardener and a promoter of native plants and a butterfly gardener. But
Yes.
he's always said that, you know, I want to do the native and I try to do the native. I've had difficulty growing it and it doesn't bloom in time for the monarchs. But I'm thinking this problem likely, and he's an older gentleman, has been around for a long time, because I'm thinking when he's thinking that the milkweed wasn't blooming in time, those were the butterflies that should be gone anyway. So perhaps.
Well, you see, I'm learning. The more we raise these plants, the more experience we get and the better understanding we have of how they grow. But what in the last few years, experimenting with all of these things, I've noticed that each category of plants has a variety of species that kind of take turns in blooming. And the milkweed especially mimics the migration because, for example, the perennis milkweed that I see growing out at the spillway in the early spring, you can be in the car and just drive by and say, oh, there it is, I see it. But as the year progresses, the other grasses that are growing in that floodplain with them start to grow and they get real tall, and the perennis is hidden in there. Now, granted, it could have happened that a monarch came and the caterpillars ate it down and it didn't grow back until later. But when the migrants come through, we don't want them to stop. We want them to keep going to Mexico. That's where they need to be growing. They don't, but when they get here and they hit all of this tropical milkweed in our gardens, they're like, hey, we're in Mexico, let's start making babies. So that's when they get trapped here. So, you know, it's complicated. It's really complicated, but the other plants like coneflowers, gaillardias, phlox, like right now I have 7 types of phlox. They each kind of take turns in their bloom. And the milkweed works the same way, coneflowers, same way, gaillardias, same way. They all have their little niche of the favorite place that they want to grow. Caroline Dorman's best advice to people on growing plants is that if you want to be successful growing native plants, recreate the habitat in which they grow. Well, if you don't hike Louisiana woods, you wouldn't understand that. You know, they grow in a floodplain, they grow but they can grow in our gardens. That's the great thing. But these other ones are a little bit more challenging to grow. So stick with what works in your area. It's my best advice.
Amazing. Well, you know, I think, again, I don't know, humans are hard-headed, but again, let nature be.
It's hard to change, but sometimes change is good. And these changes, some things we can control and some things we can't, like I spoke earlier. So we have to focus on the things that we can change. And we have to realize that we can make a difference by doing these things. So, any other questions?
Yes, and I had a question about the recording being available, and it will, I will have it available on the LMNA website in a
Awesome.
day or two.
Great, great. And that way, that's really getting the message out, because I know there's a lot of master naturalists out there who couldn't make the meeting. And so this is a fantastic way to get the word out, and I'm really pleased about it. Now, one more thing I want to mention is that all you master naturalists out there, in the fall, we're really going to need you in this program, because in July, we're going to meet with these 12 ladies again and start this program all over again. But we're going to change it just a wee bit, because after they finish raising these butterflies and sampling them, the ones that are healthy, we're going to tag them. We're going to sister up with the University of Kansas and provide tags for these ladies to tag the monarchs, because we want to know these butterflies that these people are raising and releasing in their gardens, where are they going? And I think that the fact that let me back up. So this is the time we would need the master naturalists to spend time out there, because we need to find them. So we'll need them to, whenever they see them, take a picture of the one so that we can see the tag number, or try to catch them and net them. As we get closer to that, we're going to figure it out, because we are kind of making this up as we go. But I think that once we get the data and see that, hey, it only went a few blocks, it didn't get very far, this is going to be the light bulb moment for people to realize that, hey, we shouldn't be doing this in the fall, only in the spring. So we're desperately trying to get people to understand it in any way that we can, the severity of how OE is crippling our resident. We actually don't have a resident population, it's an overwintering population. So this research is going to continue, and I hope that other people will participate on their own through the University of Georgia.
Absolutely. This has been most informative. You are right. This is some big changes that we all need to make. And,
it is. We have to rethink about raising monarchs, in the spring, and other times of year, we want to just provide nectar. I know that in the summer of 2016, when we had that invasion of the great southern white butterflies, I noticed that they really enjoyed hiding on the white flowers of the Parasite milkweed, because they were camouflaged on it. They're totally white, but just have blue eyes and blue antenna. They're really beautiful butterflies. So the Parasite can provide nectar on the flowers. And then after the caterpillars, they'll provide host for the caterpillars. So multi-purpose. And, one more thing I want to add is, people were asking me, well, can't the spores get on native plants? Well, yes, but they won't rebound and regenerate leaves where the monarchs can reuse them so repeatedly. So in our area, that's how it works. And that's how we have discovered that it works, through trial and error.
we had another question.
Yeah, one question I have is, I also have a friend that raises monarchs, and she had said that she's had some that have had crippled wings and that kind of stuff. And I keep trying to explain to her what that is. So you said about, not releasing the ones that are obviously infected. And I'm wondering if also, if you find them in your garden, I know I've seen some that have emerged that way. Is it best to euthanize ones that you see like that? And what's the best way to do that? I know it's kind of morbid, but what would you recommend in right, doing some, the best
That's
way.
a good question, and I'm glad you asked that. And this is another reason why I stopped raising monarchs, because it's so difficult to euthanize them. But you got to realize that they're just spreading the OE to all the other plants, which, it's just a trickle effect that it just makes it worse. So you can use an envelope, just a mailing envelope, and put it in there and put it in your freezer. That's one way. They just go to sleep. You could just catch it with a paper towel and get it over quickly. But when this first happened to me, before I really knew what it was. And believe me, when people come to my shop, and I describe what this is, they all go, that's what it is. You know, it's the light bulb moment that I've been seeing this. I just didn't know what it was. So that's why education is so important. But the first time this happened to me, I thought, well, I can't kill it. What am I going to do? So I got out one of my plastic aquariums that I critter condo that I raise butterflies in, and I put some flowers in there, and its tongue was in two pieces. It's like, okay, it can't really suck nectar up. It's going to die quick, you know. No, 2 weeks I watched it flopping around in there. I was like, I will never do this again. You know, and then all my equipment's got OE all over it. I mean, anyone who is raising, touching, doing anything with monarchs, you could have OE on your hands. Then you go inside. Now it's on your doorknob. Now it's on your everything you touch. So I had one lady tell me she had to euthanize 78 caterpillars. I mean, butterflies that she had raised, because when she did the walk back of like, oh, how did this happen? Because she was doing all the Cloroxing and everything right. But, you know, this OE is a difficult thing, and it's hard to understand. And there again, it's not for everybody in the state. When I visited Charles Allen up in Pitkin, Louisiana, I was at his butterfly blast in October, and it was so much fun. And we were catching monarchs. This was years ago, and tagging them. And before I left, he goes, here, take these tags. I won't need them. I said, what do you mean you won't need them? He says, well, I'm not going to see any more monarchs after this. I was like, what? You know, because we have them 365 days out of the year here. And so I just assumed that everyone else had that pleasure. But no, only during migration and in the summer will he have them. And that's just around Alexandria. So, you know, with everything we do, we learn something, and we're constantly learning. But I urge you, any article that you see about monarchs, make sure that you pay attention to who wrote it, because not everybody checks their information. So if it's from one of these universities, you know, if you go on their website, you know this is good, reliable, dependable, good information. And then we have to process it and realize what we're going to do with that in our own space and time. Does that answer?
Absolutely. Yes, very informative. I cannot thank you enough for sharing this with us. And it is a beautiful day outside. And as I visit with the master naturalist, this is the first thing I'm going to tell them.
Good, good, good. And, you know, anytime you're out there, and I know you got iNaturalist on your phone, but if you want to know something about a plant or a bug, you can always send it to me. People send me some neat pictures, you know. So anyway, it's been my pleasure to be with you today. And I hope that this will spawn some good conversations between you and your friends, families, relatives who you know who might be affected by this, because that's how we're going to spread the word.
Thank you very much.
And come visit me.
Oh, I would like to. Thank you, Linda.
Enjoy your conference and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.